In this part of this lecture, uh, I'll discuss about very promising semiconductor switching devices that are nowadays a lot of research are going on this. These are wide band gap devices, and there are several wide band gap devices, but this gallium nitride and silicon carbides are most popular, and they are commercially available also. So along this lecture, I'll give you some commercial figures also, their cost, their ratings, etc. And what are their main differences compared to the silicon-based devices. Those also will try to address in today's lecture. So as you can see, this is how typically a GaN device looks like. So it is most of the GaN devices, they are not through-hole structure, rather than they are SMDs, surface mount device based structure, and their size is much lesser than similar rated silicon based devices. So as you can see, this, if you look at this surface, so this 3 is your source, this number 2 is the gate, which is over there, and this drain is over there, the back side. So to mount this device, you can see this size of this part, roughly you can think of like maybe the size of your fingertip, maybe the nail part of your first finger. That much of size you can assume, roughly. Just nail part of your, let's say your first finger or thumb. That much of small it is for typically rated devices, which will show some specification. And in this diagram, this is the point where those GaN devices were to be soldered. They are not yet present here. I'll show one more diagram where they are present. So you can see that in the PCB itself, you are directly mounting those devices without any additional heatsink. So the PCB itself should be designed such a way that it can take out the heat. So no additional heatsink. You are directly mounting on the PCB. So, and these are the typical terminal size which you use in your PCB. So you can just have a size comparison roughly, like with respect to the terminal, how much small those devices are. So let's move ahead and discuss more about this. So to start with, we'll first understand what are the expectations from a real power electronics switching devices. So by this time, you must have fair idea about that. Now, what are the current limitations of silicon-based devices, which are now mainly used? Then we'll introduce you to this wide bandgap semiconductor devices. And as I mentioned, I'll show you some commercial figures of which devices are available, what is their price, rating, etc. And then some of the manufacturers which manufacture this kind of devices. Also, if time permits, I'll show you some hardware pictures of GaN-based BLDC motor controller, which was developed by our MTech and one of the dual degree students at IIT Kharagpur itself. So now, as you are familiar with, the expectation from power electronic switch is that they have to handle high breakdown voltage. So when they are turned off, they are supposed to withstand high amount of voltage. They should have thermal stability. They should have fast switching, low on state resistance to reduce the conduction loss, and good thermal conductivity so that the heat developed in the device can be taken out easily, and low leakage current during the blocking stage. And present day, most of the power electronic switches, they use silicon, and this silicon is being used for several years now. So they are pretty close to their thermal and voltage handling limits. This is a quite mature technology, and this is already reaching their full potential. So for further improvement, research is going on for other alternatives. So in this wide band gap devices such as silicon carbide and gallium nitride are the most prominent one. There are some other options also. We'll discuss that. So in comparison to silicon based devices, this wide band gap devices provide several benefits, like they can withstand higher voltage, they have much lesser loss. So as a result, they are more efficient. So this is the key word, they are more efficient. Also, their power density is higher than silicon. So, which means that in a given area, you can design the converter to handle more power in watt, let's say. So, of course, for wide band gap devices, not everything is good. Presently, the main concern is that their cost is on the higher side, and there are a lot of manufacturing issues. Also, there are some design issues. So, we'll discuss this shortly. When you want to implement this kind of devices in your circuits, in your application, you have to design the overall system properly, which is a big challenge. So, we'll discuss this along this lecture. So, to just revise your basic theory, remember what is the band gap. So, in the electron at the outer layers of your atom, they are generally residing in the valence band. When you excite them, they goes to the conduction band, and this zone is known as forbidden energy gap, where there is no electrons available. So, if electron moves from valence band to conduction band to make this device capable of conducting electricity. For insulator, this band gap is pretty large. That is why it needs much more energy to move electron from valence band to conduction band. And as a result, in normal temperature, they behave as an insulator. They don't carry electrical current. Semiconductor has a band gap in between the band gap of insulator and metal. So for metal or conductors, this there is overlap between valence band and conduction band, so that even in room temperature you have free electron available to carry the electric current. And for semiconductor, it is in between, so that you can control it. The switching behavior, you can control it with the proper arrangement. Now, if you look at this band gap of popular devices, so we generally use silicon and germanium. So germanium has this band gap of 0.67 eV, silicon has around 1.1, and this silicon wide band gap is generally more between 2 to 4. So the device typically coming in this zone, they are popularly known as wide band gap devices. So there are several options, as I mentioned, we'll discuss. An insulator is having this band gap more than 4 eV. And there is an interesting device called diamond, which you are very familiar with. Though it has a band gap around 5.5 or 5.6 eV, but still you can use it to be a semiconductor, which is very interesting. But of course, due to cost issues and manufacturing issues, they are not popular yet. You will find a lot of commercially available silicon and GaN devices. So let's try to understand why this band gap is important. And this will also address why you see more silicon devices, why not more germanium based power electronic switching devices. One of the straightforward reason is that this band gap is a function of temperature. So as temperature goes up, this band gap comes down. And you can see, so those devices having lower band gap, so as you know, there are a lot of losses in our power electronic switches. They are not very ideal, so they get heated up, their junction temperature goes up. So if you already have a low band gap, and due to ambient temperature or due to heating in your switching devices, if temperature goes up, the band gap even reduces. So with low band gap, problem is that they approach more towards conductor. So the switching behavior, the control is lost. Another problem is that if you remember, the breakdown voltage, that also depends on this band gap. So this is the reason that a low band gap device like germanium, though it is applicable for some specific applications, but silicon is more popular because it is having higher band gap than the germanium. And the silicon and GaN, since they are having even higher band gap, so they are offering several benefits. So we'll discuss slowly. And this chart will show you where to use and for what application you use silicon based devices. For what voltage and what frequency you prefer silicon carbide, and for what application you prefer GaN devices. So typically, as we move along, you will see that GaN devices are available in a rating of 100 to 650 volt, and silicon carbide devices are available generally for higher than that. So when you know about your voltage rating, so you can take a call which device to use. And silicon is available in almost entire range, apart from very high switching frequency. So GaN are generally preferred when you have low to medium power and you want very high switching frequency. So in fact, in our lab itself, we could use 1 megahertz switching frequency for the GaN. And silicon carbide is generally used for a bit high power application, and generally they are not very popular with high switching frequency still, but you can apply them for high switching frequency. And just to compare, remember IGBT is generally preferred for switching frequency less than 25 kilohertz, and MOSFET is suitable till maybe up to 100 200 kilohertz. Again, from this chart, you can get a similar feel for what frequency and what power application, which device to select. And also you need to understand the difference between a module and a discrete device. So by discrete device, we mean there's a single IGBT, single MOSFET, and module means maybe two devices are available in a single package, so that their layout is optimized. When you put two devices in two part of your PCB, in the interconnection part, you will see some parasitic inductance coming in, right? So those things are resolved in module level structures. So I have 2, 3, sometimes even 6 semiconductor devices are clubbed together and offered as a package. So their power density is improved, and also layout is optimized. So let's discuss more about this wide band gap devices. So as I mentioned, when this band gap is around 2 to 4 eV electron volt. So you have this wide band gap. Several example is silicon carbide, gallium nitride, gallium oxide, aluminum nitride, diamond. But as I mentioned, diamond are actually showing a lot of promises, but due to its increased cost, scalability issues, they are not popular. Silicon and GaN, they are also not very mature yet, but as compared to the other devices, there have been a lot of manufacturing advancements. So now they are commercially available also, though their price is still higher than a silicon based counterpart. But as compared to other wide band gap devices, they are finding more applications, because even in fact they are commercially available also. So just to have a comparison between GaN and silicon carbide, so that you can have a clear picture. So you can see this is the band gap comparison, and silicon and GaN offers more band gap. If you talk about the thermal conductivity, so I repeat, thermal conductivity is, in layman terms, you can think of how easily you can take out the heat developed in the junction, and how you can easily take out the heat and dissipate to some external medium, maybe a heat sink or to the ambient. So as of now, silicon carbide gives, so higher the thermal conductivity, it is better for you to design. It can withstand more temperature. With smaller heat sink, you can take out better most of the heat out. So these are the benefits. And the breakdown field leads to higher voltage blocking capability. And this electron mobility, so how fast electron can move, so that dictates your switching speed. So you can see, to get a fair idea, that GaN devices are generally pretty good for high switching device applications, but only their loophole is there. This thermal conductivity is not very good. And just to give you a figure, the Schottky diode you are very familiar with. It's a metal and semiconductor junction. So when silicon-based Schottky barrier diodes are available at 300, less than 300, the silicon carbide-based counterparts, they are available for 600 volt also. So here let's try to understand this high thermal conductivity, higher background field, this more mobility, how they are impacting. So just to look at into this in this manner, that these GaN devices, since they have high electron mobility, the switching speed reduces. As a result, you can use smaller passive component. Remember in our first lecture or maybe the second lecture, we discussed why you need filter elements for your power electronics. You need L, C, etc. Those are the passive components, sometimes transformer. So as switching frequency goes up, the size of this component comes down. So as a result, your power density of the system improves, efficiency improves. High breakdown field, it leads to high temperature withstanding capability, high voltage blocking capability. Then thermal conductivity, as I mentioned, so your cooling system requirement comes down. So all these things finally ends with reduced energy consumption, reduced cost, though this is a question mark, but this is definitely true for most of the applications. Weight reduction is also true because with higher switching frequency, you can reduce your passive component, which are one of the major weight contributing factors. So once you start designing a power electronic converter, you will learn more about it. And since these devices can be used for high voltage and high temperature kind of conditions, so there are several areas which needs your devices to be operating in a harsh environment conditions. So for them, these devices are very popular. And the applications when you need very high power density, for example, for aerospace application, sometimes for your electric vehicle application, where you want your device to be as compact as possible and its weight should be much lesser, its volume should be lesser because you have to carry the device along with your vehicle or along with your for aerospace application. So there you want them to be very lightweight and very compact in size. For that you need high efficiency, of course. And for those applications which does not need it, for example, if you are designing a power electronic interface for rural area where you want to design a system where solar photovoltaic is giving power to your household load and you may have a battery backup to balance out the intermittent nature of solar photovoltaics. So there, if you are applying a rural kind of area, then there the size, volume and weight, those figures are not very important. Their main figure of importance is the cost and reliability. So there you typically will be going with silicon based devices. So it depends on what application you have, and based on that you decide what kind of switch you need. So to summarize, this advantage you are now familiar with. It gives you higher breakdown voltage, faster switching, lower switching loss and high temperature. Now with this advantage, at the system level you can reduce the size of other component, as I mentioned, the size of cooling requirement, size of the passive component. So if you can design properly, even it can lead to lower cost, but that is still a challenge. It's not very straightforward. And to summarize this, when you learn about a power electronic converter, for example, simple a buck converter, there is a switch, there is a diode, there is the inductor, there is a capacitor, and then there is a load. So the cost of this power electronic converter, it is not only about the switching cost. It also the cost of the passive component, then cost of the cooling system requirement, the size of your heat sink, right, and several other factors. So if you can design it properly so that your other cost comes down, so even though your power electronic device cost is more due to wide band gap devices, but if you can design the system properly so that other requirement comes down, cooling requirement comes down, so your fan or heatsink size they comes down, passive component size comes down, right? So then still they find application. So quickly let me tell you what are the main challenges for this wide band gap application in our power electronic products. So now the main problem with this wide band gap is that their manufacturing is not yet mature. At manufacturing level, they have some problems still persisting. One of the main issues is that the wafer size. The wafer is basically a thin sheet of semiconductor material based on which you keep on building up the semiconductor devices. So these are very thin layer of devices, but their dimension, sometimes they are done in a circular fashion. So for making them commercially viable, low cost, the size of that wafer has to be larger, and it has to be thin also. So these two constraints are contradictory, because with thin kind of devices you cannot have large diameter or large size, so otherwise it will break down. So the commercially available silicon, where they are available for more than 200 mm, as of now, most of the silicon carbide and GaN devices, they could achieve around 150 mm wafer size. So still a lot of improvements are going on, and in the near future maybe we'll see a parity in the comparison. Another issue is that when you are applying devices like GaN, where you want to have very high switching frequency, then the packaging has to be done very carefully, and it is a very big challenge for the manufacturers, because for such high frequency, even if you have a very small inductance in the layout, right? So due to this LDIDT problem, because you are having switching at a very, very high speed, so this DDT is very, very small. So even with small inductance, this LDIDT could be pretty large. So this packaging is still an issue. And apart from them, of course, economic challenge is there. Their price is low. The price of wide bandgap devices are much higher than silicon. But now they are coming closer actually. So I'll show you a graph where you can get a clear idea about that. Typically, industry expects that when this wide bandgap price will be lesser than twice of the silicon, typically, roughly on that figure, then it will be on same level as far as the overall system cost. And one of the other non-technical problem with wide bandgap is that since it is not yet mature technology, so a lot of designers are hesitant to apply it in their product because their long-term effect is not yet been observed, and a lot of people are not aware of this, so someone need to promote them. Finally, the reliability is still an issue, as I mentioned. So the standard relevant to the reliability is yet to be developed, which is much developed for silicon-based devices. And this is a very interesting point. Let's say you have designed a buck converter or a DC to AC converter using silicon. Let's say silicon-based MOSFET. So now if I give you a GaN-based MOSFET, you won't be able to simply replace that silicon device and put a GaN here. The reason is their packaging is mostly entirely different, and to get benefit of the GaN as compared to silicon, you have to design it accessories accordingly. For example, when a silicon-based MOSFET, you will be operating it in a frequency of 50 to 100 kilohertz maybe. GaN, you would like to operate more than 500 kilohertz typically. So then your driver circuit design changes, your PCB layout design changes. And once you go with high switching frequency, definitely you would like to use low size for your inductor, capacitor. So this is not just a replacement. If you want to get most benefit of your wide bandgap devices, you have to design your entire power converter to optimize the benefit of the wide bandgap devices. So those are still a challenge. For example, this packaging you have seen, right? For example, normal silicon-based MOSFET or IGBT, they comes in a through-hole package, whereas GaN comes in a surface mount kind of package. So, and it needs, and you don't have any place to provide heat sink also. So this layout is a challenge. So here in this figure, you can see the manufacturing process for a silicon-based device. And this is the cost prediction that they're coming down, which is a good sign for us. And just to give you an idea about the commercial availability of this kind of devices, so these are taken from Mauser. Please note that I am not promoting Mauser anyway. I'm just showing you this data for your ready reference. So these are the data that I took yesterday only. So it's very updated data, September 2020. So now you can see the GaN devices have this kind of rating, 100 volt and 90 ampere. So typically this is the highest current device available in Mauser, and look at their cost. So just to give you a figure to get an idea, typical similar rating silicon based devices, they will be having price around 250, 150 to 250. And this is around 638. Of course, this is just an example. The cost depends on several factors, as you know. Also, GaN devices are available for a rating 650 volt. So the GaN devices are basically available from 100 to 650 volt mostly, and current rating you can see is most of them has current rating up to 90 ampere. And if you do the same analysis for SiC devices, so this is a SiC MOSFET. You can see they are now available for 1.7 kV also, with decent current rating. And for their low voltage counterpart even has this kind of current rating, 340 ampere is, and then 60 volt, 85 volt. So please keep visiting sites like Element 14, or this Mauser, or I believe you're familiar with DigiKey. So there you will get to know about all this information. You get access to the data sheet, which you can study, and you can figure it out what is the differences if you want to know more about them. So I have already uploaded 2-3 data sheets for GaN and silicon carbide devices in the Google Drive folder for your ready reference. Please go through them and study them in your free time to get a feel about difference between silicon based and wide bandgap based devices. And this is pretty straightforward, just for information. Who are the major manufacturers for wide bandgap devices and some of the commercial product available. So for example, this Enphase is a very interesting, though I think they are not very popular now, but when they first started with microinverter, they were very popular at that time, and this Enphase was one of the driving force for popularity and reducing the cost for SiC diodes. Because until and unless you develop this kind of devices at mass scale, their cost cannot come down. So Enphase was the company. By the way, the microinverter is solar to electricity grid. Typically the rating would be around 36 volt or 18 volt, and power rating less than 300 watt, and this grid set will be 230 volt, 50 hertz typically. So microinverter is an inverter which convert your solar power, the solar output, to DC to AC. So solar is DC, and the AC side you have 230 volt, and in India 110 volt in countries like USA. So from this low voltage you need high voltage boosting. So one of the solution is to go with microinverter. Micro because their power rating is much lesser. So Enphase was one of the popular microinverter, but I believe it is not that popular now. I need to cross check. So they started using these silicon carbide devices, and as a result, the silicon carbide devices start getting more popular. Due to mass production, their costs came down. And this figure will show you, this table will show you for different application, for solar, wind, motor drives, for hybrid and electric vehicles, typically what is the voltage rating required, what are the power level minimum maximum, so that you can get a clear idea for which application what type of voltage blocking capability is required. And from the power rating you will get a rough idea about the current rating also. So you get a clear picture about for what application what rating is to be used, and you combine with this kind of figures to get a clear idea for what application which device you can prefer. So these are very self-explanatory. Please go through them in your free time. And as I was mentioning, this is one of the work regarding this GaN-based BLDC, which was done in one of our labs. It was carried out by Dr. and Hemant. And as I mentioned, to just give you an idea, so this is how where you are implementing that GaN. Of course, this PCB, please note that this PCB is not at all optimized. It is just for laboratory prototype. Just to give you an idea that the size of GaN is pretty less. You can see actually the GaN is mounted over here. So with respect to just a normal those connectors or terminals, you can see the size is too less and there is no heatsink at all. So you have some sort of thermal pad embed into the PCB itself to take out the heat. No dedicated heatsink. But if you remember one of the prototype that I showed you in the first lab, where we had this IGBT and MOSFET, you had seen there is a big heatsink sitting over there. So this itself is a challenge for GaN. Just think about it, that you have to handle 90 ampere of current and 100 ampere of volt using this kind of small track widths. The device size is very small, so your track width has also must be very small. So how do you handle such high current? And this, though their thermal conductivity is better, but finally there will be some loss. How do you take out without using a heatsink? How do you design the layout? So all those things are still a challenge. And also the driver circuit design. Now there are several companies which gives you some ready-made driver circuits. For example, this one from Texas Instrument. So you can combine with the IGB. This is the part number for the GaN devices that was used at our lab. And these are the current sensors, current sense amplifiers, and this is a DC-DC converter to give auxiliary power supply to ICs and to your driver circuit. And this is a small BLDC motor. And this system was driven from FPGA board. And sometimes you combine both the advantage of FPGA and DSP also. So to summarize, wide bandgap devices gives you several benefits. Switching loss, the power loss comes down. As a result, power density improves. Your cooling requirement comes down. So you can, if you can design the system properly, you can reduce the weight of the system. You can, you may even design, if you design it properly, their cost could be comparable with the silicon-based devices, particularly in near future when the device cost is coming down. One silicon-based solution typically has efficiency figure of 85% to 97%. With this wide bandgap devices, you can target 99%. Some of the application, even they are saying that they have achieved more than 99% efficiency. But still there is a challenge from the cost side, from the manufacturing side, from the design criteria of your power electronic system, specifically the auxiliary side and the PCB layout, etc. So once these issues can be taken care, this wide bandgap device has a very promising future.